Okay, so give rise to that bodhicitta that you have given rise to in the past. You gave this bodhicitta that that you made a commitment to bring to accomplishment, and that have this intention to study these teachings, to listen to the teachings now, and to study them in order to fulfill your commitment to care for beings in the best possible way. So we are discussing now the fourth chapter of the Bodhicharyavatara, which is the chapter that instructs us or gives us, Shantideva shares with us how he has not allowed his bodhicitta to diminish or become corrupted. And the first way that he had done this is through cultivating carefulness or heedfulness. Once we've taken the bodhisattva vow, then we should realize that it's easy to lose. Minute to minute, it's easy to lose, and year to year, it's easy to lose, and lifetime to lifetime, it's easy to lose, to forget. And so through carefulness or heedfulness, mindfulness and awareness, then our bodhicitta is sustained and nourished. This first section of the 3 chapters that discuss how bodhicitta must be maintained, or how to practice the path so that our bodhicitta won't diminish or become interrupted or lost. And so first, just to quickly highlight what we've discussed previously, we do need to know what the discipline of bodhicitta is, all the downfalls, the breakages, what breaks your bodhicitta vow, what damages or dents or impairs your bodhicitta vow, what violates your bodhicitta vow. And so Shantideva doesn't go into the details of all of the vows, but what he's sharing, or what his advice is in this chapter, is how to hold our mind, how to work with our mind in such a way that the effect of that effort results in not losing bodhicitta. So it's very clearly discussed in the commentary how all of the vows and commitments of bodhicitta shouldn't just become a burden and a prison but we should know what they are and then practice heedfulness, mindfulness, and awareness, so that the result will be that we uphold the commitments. And then in this way, our wisdom quality will come forth. So the teachings that he's presenting here are more on the side of the cause of maintaining bodhicitta. And the first thing to bring to mind, or the first thing that he's explaining to practice, is to reflect on what it is that we need to accomplish. And so this bodhicitta, he goes into in the first several verses of what it is that we are to accomplish. And then goes on to where we are now. On the verse 15 is the beginning of the section on reflecting on our precious human life that will instill carefulness. If we contemplate and reflect again and again on these verses of the precious human life, then we will our upholding or our respecting or our carefulness will arise naturally. It won't be just because we're forcing ourselves in a discipline, but by knowing the discipline, but then really working on what it is that will instill in us carefulness. And so in verse 15, he says the appearance of the Buddha in the world, true faith in the attainment of a human form, and aptitude for good, all these are rare. When will they come to me again? So here he's pointing to the various contemplations or reflections on who it is that can actually benefit beings in the most, how do we say, the most ultimate way, or the most superb way. And in order to be able to benefit beings, then we need to have this certain freedoms and advantages. And he puts three here: the appearance of the Buddha in the world, which seems like what Shantideva is saying, that of all of the circumstantial advantages, then the appearance of the Buddha in the world is the most significant one. If we lived during a time when there was no human record, or there was no a cultural memory of an enlightened being, then we wouldn't be able to engage wholeheartedly or fully in the path to awakening. The word wouldn't even be part of our vocabulary, and certainly there wouldn't be any indication, or there'd be no support for thinking that one could attain a state of awakening. So the fact that a Buddha appeared in the world makes this particular time period the most excellent. And it happens to be a time when we're here in the world also. And not only did the Buddha come, but the Buddha taught, gave teachings, And he didn't just give them once during his lifetime, but he gave them over the course of his 50 years of teaching to various levels of individuals who were open to those teachings. And not only did he guide and develop individuals over those years, but those individuals realized the teachings, and those teachings have been continually studied, taught, contemplated, meditated on, and realized since that time right up until the present. And so there are the presence of authentic practitioners still in the world as part of the advantage, and we have the advantages of being part of that group, of that sangha, and we've also been accepted, so to speak, or we've been we've been given access to those same teachings. And so all of these are advantages of our outer circumstances. And then what says true faith is the indication of the personal advantages. So have the environmental or circumstantial advantages I just mentioned, and then the personal advantages of having having a human body, having all of our cognitive and sense faculties functioning, and having faith, and not having any overriding karmic circumstances that would prevent us from hearing, studying, reflecting on, or meditating and accomplishing the Dharma. All of those personal factors, what we've inherited in this life, those advantages are, well, we should reflect on them. That's what Shantideva is saying. Because we need to have those circumstances, those advantages, in order to practice what's meaningful, or in order to accomplish what's meaningful. And the attainment of a human form, which again, now this is the one of the factors of the 8 freedoms, what we're free of. You know, we have these 10 personal and circumstantial advantages, and then we need also to be free from those factors that would make it impossible for us to practice what's meaningful, to learn, to reflect, and to meditate and accomplish what's meaningful. And those, of course, first we need to have this human body, and we need to be free of being born under the most adverse, painful circumstances of the 3 lower realms of the animal, tormented ghosts or spirits, and those in the cold and hot realms of suffering, in the hell realms, where in those 3 areas, or those 3 environments, it would be impossible to practice all those factors that are that make up the path to awakening. And in our case here, particularly, it would be impossible to practice the various forms of generosity, or to uphold the various disciplines of the Bodhisattva, to practice patience, to practice diligence and joyful endeavor, or to learn to train and bring our mind, to tame our mind, and to gain insight into our mind's nature, and to realize prajna, to realize wisdom. Animals and tormented spirits and hell beings have no opportunity to engage in those factors that, such as that. And nor would it be available, or nor would we have the leisure to practice if we were completely oblivious to the teachings. We're born in a place, what is referred to as a border area. That is to say, a place where the teachings of the Dharma never penetrated, or a barbarian place. I mean, it could be, our next door neighbor, it could be our roommate, it could be, it's not some geographical area. It's just people who are cut off from being open to the teachings, or just that the circumstances never comes about that they would ever hear them. So we are free of that kind of life. And also, we are not under the influence of wrong views. We may have certain samsaric tendencies, but we do have some sense that our actions have consequences. And if we engage in the virtuous practices that lead to awakening, then we will experience various forms of happiness that will culminate in the state of awakening. We don't have the wrong view of thinking that negative actions have no negative results, and there's no benefit to practicing wholesome, virtuous actions. We're free of that. Also we're free of being born during a dark age, again referring to the Buddha not being, not existing, not appearing in that time. This is not the Dark Ages. This is called the Fortunate Eon because for us, in our time period, we are in the beginning of a series of a time span where many Buddhas will appear, including Shakyamuni Buddha, who appeared as the fourth of 1,000 Buddhas. So this is called a fortunate eon, fortunate kalpa or era. And all of we have this human body, and it's pretty much fully functioning. We have the cognitive ability to be able to read, to listen to the teachings, to study, to reflect on, to examine our life, to see, to kind of prove or to remove doubts, to deepen our understanding. We can approach the Dharma, and basically we can approach the Dharma in more and more subtler ways. We have the capacity to have subtle experience, subtle understanding.
Cool. Well, that didn't work.
So,
Yeah,
so
well, I
these,
wanted
these
the
are
sound to come
considered
out.
to be rare
You do that.
circumstances.
Thought there was a way to do it.
And why are they rare is because of the cause. Our circumstances, if you look at your life right now from this vantage point through the lens of these 8 freedoms and 10 advantages, we can understand that if we have all of these attributes, that they're very rare because of the cause. The cause of the freedoms is that we have in the past avoided harmful negative actions on the one hand, with the intention, on the other hand, we've avoided those negative actions with the intention to take birth in a circumstance where we would be able to practice the Dharma, to practice what's meaningful, what's beneficial. So it was through the action, the conduct of avoiding negative actions with that motivation, with that motivation or aspiration. So that's a case where avoiding negative actions is in itself a virtue. And so because of having accumulated moments, many moments of avoiding negative actions, and avoiding negative actions means that we were drawn to negative actions and avoided through some methods, through some means. We didn't indulge in negative actions. And we didn't do it because of having some understanding that if we avoid negative actions, it will be to our benefit. And what's to our benefit on the Mahayana path is to be able to then benefit others. And through a much diligence and effort, the product of all of our actions in the past have resulted in our present circumstance of being free of these 8 states where practicing would be impossible. And the cause of the advantages, being born during the time of the Buddha and so forth, and the cause of that we are experiencing was the intentional virtue with that same motivation to have a human life that would be able to practice the Dharma. And so both avoiding negative actions in this life, in samsara, avoiding negative actions, and then practicing new virtue are difficult. It really goes against the theme of samsara, which is sort of downhill. The kleshas, it's easy to indulge in the kleshas. It's hard to avoid the actions of the klesha, that the kleshas motivate. It's hard to think up virtue. And so we've been able to do that in the past, and you should relate to your life as being the product, the proof of the benefits of giving up negative actions and practicing virtuous actions. And that's not easy to do. It's considered to be very difficult. certainly we can examine our own life and think back from when we were very young, born, up to now. How have we been doing? You know, what kind of virtue have we been creating? What kind of negative actions have we been able to repel or avoid? And what's been our aspiration? You know, has it been altruistic? So when we contemplate and reflect in that way, then the result of that contemplation will be carefulness. Carefulness refers to our body, speech, and mind. We'll be careful in what our conduct, what we say, and what we think. You see? So when he says here, when will they come to me again? Shantideva is skeptical that probably this circumstance that he found himself in won't come again. And if he thought that, then when we reflect on it, we should be a little worried enough to be careful and to remember our bodhicitta commitment. It's forgettable. Then this next verse says, today indeed I'm hale and well. I have enough to eat and I'm not in danger. Okay. But this life is fleeting, unreliable. My body is like something briefly lent. Basically what he's bringing out here is that we shouldn't take our situation for granted. You know, all these freedoms, all these advantages, we should, as practitioners, from time to time, when we reflect on our mood, our elevated mood, or our depressed mood, or we should reflect on that, and then apply these, and then select and apply these some aspect of these teachings to your mind. And certainly contemplating the precious human birth and the rarity of it and the difficulty of attaining it, and if you analyze whether or not you've attained it, the percentages may convince you that you've got a fair amount of the freedom and a fair amount of advantages, then we should rejoice. It's significant because we can act in ways that are meaningful. We can bring meaning into that life that has these freedoms and advantages. And so we shouldn't, when we get too cocky or too kind of pumped up about it, kind of elevated about it, almost maybe proud. I mean, it is a practice that does elicit some kind of self-esteem, you know, in a Buddhist way, and so we should be uplifted and enthusiastic about our circumstance. And we can always think of detrimental. We can always think of things that are depressing or difficult in our lives. But here, these aspects, the freedoms and advantages, are really what's significant. They outweigh any economic or you know, and they outweigh all the other aspects of our life. Then we should, when we get too distracted by our life as being so, we have so much freedom, so many advantages and so forth. And by freedom here, it's not, we mean particularly the freedom to practice new virtue, not habit virtue. Habit virtue is fine, but to train our mind means to train it in a new level, something new. I call it new. I don't know. We want to improve, not just do what if we happen to have natural tendencies, natural good manners or good habits or so forth, kind of a generous disposition and so forth, those are impermanent. But if we have the freedoms and advantages, we can create new circumstances that will be of benefit. And so reflecting on that, we should rejoice and feel happy. And then if we get to be too distracted by that, then we should then reflect on the next verse, which is how unreliable all that is, how impermanent. They all had a cause, and the effect is such, but that effect has a duration. It has our freedom and our advantages have a shelf life. And at a certain point, the karma will no longer support that experience of freedom and advantages. So we say, don't take it for granted, or don't think that you have actually attained a level of evolution, some spiritual evolution where you're on some spiritual elevator, and now you've landed on it, and all you have to do is just let it take you. But the basis for the working basis for our bodhicitta practice is impermanent. The working basis is not stable. It's impermanent and unreliable. And as he says here, it's basically, it will be claimed by karmic, by the maturing of karma that brings about a change. Change will claim it, or death. Death will claim our body. My body is like something briefly lent. Basically, we should think that it's on loan, and it really belongs to Yama, the Lord of Death. And at a certain point, he will come and claim it. That's one, primitive way of talking. But death is the real landlord. And so our body, we should think of it as something that's just on loan. It's like a boat. A boat. Then he says here, and yet the way I act is such that I shall not regain a human life. Now Shantideva is alarmed when he reflects on how his mind naturally seems to gravitate towards non-virtue. When he's idle, when we're idle, our mind tends to go kind of downhill. And when we're with others, our reactions are non-virtuous, just almost like our instinctually. So he's reflecting on that. And so therefore then I won't regain a human life. And losing this, my precious human form, my evils will be many, virtues none. So when our instincts dominate us, then we become more and more ignorant. Instincts are thoughtless impulses that aren't recognized as such, and they lead to ignorance, or they're the product of ignorance. It's a conundrum. It's a circle, a wheel. So he says then, here is now my chance for wholesome deeds. That is to say, with a precious human body, with my mind living in a human body, such as it is, I can learn and act in virtuous ways with my conduct, with my speech, and with my mind. I can do that now that this is a chance for wholesome deeds. But if I fail to practice virtue, what will be my lot? What shall I do? Bewildered by the sorrows of the lower realms. The sorrows of the lower realms usually always have to do with the big problem in the animal and tormented spirits and the hell realms, and also in the heavenly realms. Pleasure, when we are just adrift on the waves of pleasure, we're ignorant of what to do and what not to do, what to avoid, what kind of conduct, what kind of actions, what kind of thoughts, what kind of speech, what should we avoid, and what should we strive to do. The problem with these non-human realms is that that is the ignorance that's present there. We have ignorance, of course, but in the other realms, it's much more dominant. So we should reflect on that. You know, what will we do if we wind up in some place, some realm, some experience where ignorance of how to react, what's the most beneficial thing, even for one's own self, even, let alone benefiting others. There's no clue. It's always the best place to be is where you have an opportunity to learn what to do and what not to do, and encounter someone trustworthy and undeceiving, someone who's undeceiving, who doesn't deceive, speaks truth, like Buddha Shakyamuni. Never there performing any virtue, he says, only ever piling up my sins, and for 100 million ages I'll not even hear of happy destinies. So there's all there is just reacting to circumstances out of various instincts. And there's no cause for happiness, or even hearing that there are happier realms, happier happier, or here it says destinies. You know? That there's a whole nother chunk of experience that you completely have no clue of. Like in animal realm and lower realms, they have no clue that there are places where you can do make choices or do meaningful things or be introspective, you know, develop a perspective on the situation, think abstractly, and empathize, new empathy, or all these qualities. Then 20, this is why Lord Buddha has declared that like a turtle that perchance can place its head within a yoke adrift upon the mighty sea, this human birth is difficult to find. That's a very familiar quote from the sutras. I was very impressed how the translator managed to get that all in one nicely arranged sentence. That's a big thought. So from time to time, contemplate this example. You know, when we contemplate in a formal setting this precious human birth and how difficult it is to find, then it says, you know, contemplate this by all different angles, from all different angles. And one angle is by contemplating various examples. It says cause, number, example, and so forth. So this is one of those examples, that if the whole world was a sea, an ocean, and living on the bottom of that ocean was a blind turtle, and once every 100 years, that turtle would come up to the surface and take a gulp of air and then go back down again. That was the lifestyle of that turtle. Then if there was some a ring, yoke, well, like a life preserver, you know, like a ring that floats. If that was just cast adrift, and the water, the waves, the wind, the weather, and so forth caused it to just go here and there, willy-nilly, all over this endless sea, that the chances of that turtle, when it came up for that gulp of air, putting its head through that ring, are, well, the odds are against it. It's possible, but definitely the odds are against it. And so that's a contemplation or a reflection to think about, as far as how difficult it is to have all of these, to have a human birth with all these freedoms and advantages that we've been mentioning. So juxtaposition that and support that reflection with that example. That's from one sutra. Again, why is it so difficult? Because it takes virtue. Okay, so that's the contemplation. Those, how many? Those are 6 verses that will provide support for reflecting on this precious human birth as a way to instill carefulness. Okay. Carefulness meaning knowing what to do and what not to do in regards to one's bodhicitta vow, in regards to maintaining the integrity of one's bodhicitta vow. The next, okay. Then verse 21, and this next section of teachings or suggestions are reflecting on how difficult it is to be freed of, to be free from the lower realms. I mean, we might think, I'm sure, I'm not alone thinking that, oh, if I was just a turtle, I'd love to just be sitting on the bottom of the ocean for a while, just it's all just too much, you know. This is now we should contemplate how difficult it is to be free of the lower realms. I mean, of course, we can discuss, and he refers here and there to the kind of difficulties, the experiences in the lower realms, but just as it's difficult to be born as a human, in spite of, and of course for us, in spite of overpopulation, you know, something's going on karmically. But in spite of overpopulation of humans, still having the freedoms and advantages are rare. I don't know if the percentage, no matter how many human beings there are, the percentages that have this precious human birth are still small. I think one example contemplating is that all the stars at night are like human birth. And if you see a star in the daytime, that's a precious human birth. It's that rare to be able to see a star in the daytime. So that's that. Okay, now he's reflecting on how difficult it is to be freed from the lower realms in order to instill being heedful. If through the evil action of a single instant I must spend an eon in the hell of unrelenting pain, the evils in samsara stored from time without beginning, no need to say that they will keep me from the states of bliss. So, a single instant, even a single instant, or like a karma, an action can ripen from a single instant of an act. For instance, as it mentioned earlier, like if you harbor or if you give rise to a very negative thought towards a bodhisattva, then there was some mention there of how for each instant the suffering you'll experience will be very great. And so, or the effect of your action will come after a certain, the completion of the act. Sometimes it'll take time to complete an act. So we can't know all the negative actions that we've engaged in, indulged in, and rejoiced in, and encouraged others to also engage in negative actions. All those actions will ripen as various forms of a life, of experiences that are not good, that are suffering. And certainly if they lead us down to the lower realms, and by lower realms, we have to be clear, I think I mentioned earlier, lower realms or evil destinies or various nomenclature that it's used. In Buddhism, because our nature is blissful, the Dharmakaya nature of mind is, the tone of it is blissful. The knowing quality of it is omniscience. The tone of it, you could say, is blissful. The radiance of it is the all-embracing compassion. So from that point of view, not realizing that natural state of mind, then everything is a form of unsatisfactoriness. Everything other than that realization or that integration is the result of being alienated, feeling alienated from our nature. And so there's always shortcomings to anything other than Buddhahood, say. Or not maybe Buddhahood, but anything other than awakening to our true nature will have shortcomings. And the degree of those shortcomings is what's graphically presented as the 6 realms of experience. And so if we have the precious human birth in one of those alienated realms, then we have the opportunity to forge a path to awaken. If we don't, then there's various experiences of karma, various effects of karma that are felt by the mind that has that Dharmakaya nature. And the more that negative, thoughtless, instinctual actions ripen that are from negative kleshas, negative afflictions, motivated by negative afflictions, the more negative the afflictions is the greater amount of suffering. And so if I don't know about, if we were going to look at these different forms of suffering and add value to them, then some will be less valuable than others. Like precious human birth is sort of the most valuable form of suffering in samsara. Plain better than even blissful experiences that are experienced as the result of positive action, lots of virtuous actions, real heartfelt virtue. that results in the less suffering of the God realms. But there's still a form of suffering there that's latent, that's not felt directly in the heavenly realms until the karma of the pleasure no longer supports that experience. Then the suffering is very great. So when here it says lower realms, or what's the other term they use? States of loss. These are translator terms, or the evil destinies. Those are all terms that are assuming that there's a value, it's like an added value to a sentient being's experience, that the more suffering a being experiences, the least likely they are to attain awakening because of the degree of suffering. And so if it's like good and bad are not moral values, but they are suffering values. They're increments of suffering. Just, I don't know, just to footnote these terms, because he will use them again and again. The same with evil action and sin. They're not morally evil. They're evil because they lead to suffering. So and then he says, and the mere experience of such pain does not result in being freed from it. For in the very suffering of such states, more evil will occur, and then in great abundance. So, okay, so let's see, to go into this a little bit. This reflection clarifies the idea that we have of purifying karma through suffering. So, for instance, like expressed anger results in, with as a motivator of a negative action, as a harmful action, but expressed anger results in the hot hells, the various hells of hot hells. And there's different degrees of suffering, the heat of the result of anger, and of course in the classical descriptions, there are 8, and then there's neighborings, and then there's subdivisions, and then there's just the way that different beings, different consciousnesses experience it according to their immediately preceding life, or their historical long time previous life, how they experienced the previous death, what was their attitude at death, and so forth. So there's all these individualized permutations of experiences, but as a chunk of experience, it's a heat of expressed anger experienced in an intense way without the protection of a body that can shield mind from that experience, like our body shields our mind from extreme heat and cold. Then we can add more down jackets and things, or wear less clothes and so forth. But our suffering there's a bodily correspondence. The hell beings don't have a body. It's very raw. It's like if we peeled our skin away and then went out in the heat or the cold. And so in the initial levels of the hell realms, the experiences we have of aggression from others and the torture and so forth that go hand in hand with the already suffering of the heat of the hell realms, we react with anger again. We're attacked and beat to unconsciousness, and then we revive again. That's one of the early experiences, the lighter experiences of the hot hells and so forth. And I'm sure you've probably looked into these, so we experience anger and paranoia and fear and terror and hatred and all of the negative emotions, you could say afflictions, that got us there in the first place, that were the cause of what got us there in the first place. It's called karma that is concurrent or in harmony with the cause. So the cause of birth in the hell realm, say, was anger, and then the experience that we have there is also making more anger. And that anger gets, as the experience becomes more and more tortured and more intense, our anger also becomes more and more intense. Until we get to the most intense kind of effect where there's no anger at all. It's just pure suffering, pure pain of heat. And the same thing on the other side is that's expressed anger in the hot hells. Then there's suppressed anger that have all of the results that correspond to the various levels of the cold hells. And similarly there, you just get worse and worse, but then when it gets to be so intense, there is no afflictions in operation. And then at that point, it could be said, just to clarify this, that you are purifying karma, or you are exhausting karma. So it's not correct to say that simply by having a painful experience, we are carrying out, or we are purifying the cause that brought about that unsatisfactory experience. That would be presumptuous to say that. That might not be the case. Usually when we are afflicted by something, we react in a very similar manner as what caused it to occur. So if you get sick and you get all upset and blame, bacteria, or blame the food you ate, or blame, then you are engaging in the cause. So where's the purification occurring there? The way to purify negative experiences are to use your ability to know. To know. Usually, or not usually, but sometimes the results of our actions are greater than our ability to maintain a knowing perspective. something unwanted lands in our lap, and first of all, because we didn't have an understanding of impermanence, we're outraged. And then we project on some cause that's somewhere else. So where's the purification in a circumstance like that? You know? If you react and can separate yourself, or let's say relative to, what is that word? You know, in proportion to your ability to wedge your self, your mind, your thinking from your experience, and know something about it, then that's the level of purification. Even if you go, oh my God, if you realize that, wow, I thought I understood impermanence, I didn't expect this, then you've purified something because you're coming around to the truth of impermanence. The truth is what purifies. And then if you can say, wow, this is the result of actions. Okay, there's some purification. This is my actions, particularly, not somebody else's actions. This is not some, you know, Chinese laboratory, you know, or something that something escaped from. But this is my karma, and since it's causing me pain, it must have been caused by something that was motivated by a negative affliction, something like anger or craving or stupidity or jealousy or envy, something negative. If you can own that system, you know, that, oh, this was caused, and the cause must be something that occurred in my mind at some point, and since it's painful, then that mind must have been telling speech and body to do something negative, or do something out of anger, say, and now I'm experiencing the result of it. Then your prajna is functioning, and prajna will, that's what will purify to, you know, in proportion to its clarity or strength. So simply wallowing in pain, thinking that you're purifying karma without adding something to do with prajna or compassion, it's not accurate, actually. It's just wishful thinking. You have to participate in purifying in that way by using your those qualities of wisdom and compassion. If you turn your mind, oh, this is very uncomfortable. Oh, it reminds me of how so many people are feeling this way and even worse. Oh, if I only could peel away all their suffering that's like this that I'm having, if only I could peel that all away and put it right here and have them free from it, then you're purifying karma. Then you might not even want to be purifying karma at that level. But it's being purified. So, like he says here, the mere experience of pain doesn't result from being free from it. That's all that, as to say that. In the very suffering of such states, more evil will occur. That is to say, that the effects are similar to the cause regarding your experience and your behavior, and even worse, you know. So then, thus, having found this moment of reprieve, this situation where I do have the aptitude for Dharma practice, I do have the aptitude to know what is virtuous, what leads to awakening. I do have the aptitude to know what will benefit sentient beings. It's a moment. If I now fail to train myself in virtue, what greater folly could there ever be? What more? How more could I betray myself? I guess we would say how neurotic. How neurotic that would be, to not use this opportunity and be careful to train in being heedful of my mind, to catch it and turn it, and my speech to not use it until it knows why it's saying what it's saying and so forth, and my conduct. So I need to train myself in virtue. Training implies that it's not easy. It's not, let's say, not easy. It's not, it might be, it's not, we want to train in virtue that's not natural. If we had maybe through the kindness of our parents, they taught us certain social conventions to make other people feel comfortable. We don't walk around naked, or we don't do things that make other people uncomfortable, or give seats. I don't know if people even do that anymore, but like young people giving seats to older people, and respect, all these kind of things. Like that's been inculcated, so that it's kind of instinctual in some people. But we want to train in virtue, new virtue. So if we can use this situation, okay, then it's possible, or we could attain Buddhahood in this lifetime with this precious human birth. Before we die, we may attain awakening. We may realize and grow thoroughly, completely accept our nature, so that we are completely free of all afflictions. Or in our next life, if we're careful in this life, according to this way, then in our future, our next life, we will have again a human birth with the potential to the freedoms and advantages, possibly to continue on the Bodhisattva path. Or in our next life, we may certainly encounter the lineage of the Bodhisattva path. That is to say, we will rendezvous with a Bodhisattva. We will meet with a Bodhisattva who will accept us with their kindness. And the minimum of using this life to its great advantage is that we won't have regret when we die. We won't look back on our life with regret, but we will look back on our life and see that from this vantage point, all these worldly concerns, all the successes and the prestige and all those things mean nothing. I know that I defeated my afflictions. I know that I practiced virtue to the best of my ability. I know, we don't have regret at having invested in compassion and training our prajna, training our knowing qualities in study and reflection and meditation. Like, we won't have regret. Any worldly success we have, and having this precious human birth at this time, when we look back, then there's some regret. Oh, I squandered my time on worldly pursuits. worrying about, you know, success, worrying about money, worrying about these things. If now, from the perspective now I'm dying, if I had if I had strived towards the virtue of the path to awakening, all those things would have just naturally occurred in the course of things. It's like Milarepa, they asked Milarepa how it was that he was able to endure all the hardships that he endured in the mountains, you know, or in the, not mountains, in the, you know, he lived on the edges of glaciers and places. He said, all I did here, like, all my realization arose because I didn't want to die with regret. So Shantideva is, of course, he predates Milarepa, but he's using that same logic. How more could I betray myself? So if having understood all this, I'm stupid. If having understood all this, I'm stupidly despondent still, then at the moment of my death, my sorrows will be black indeed. My remorse will be very weighty. You know, without having, at the moment of death, I realize I haven't really obtained anything on a meaningful, on an inner level, and I've been tricked by the worldly dharmas. I squandered my life. I was always an angry person. I had no compassion. I was lazy. I had no diligence. You know, just like stupidly despondent like that. You know, at the moment of death, then that'll just haunt us. And then it's our body is no longer supporting our mind, but our mind just keeps going. And when my body burns so long in fires of hell, so unendurable, my mind, there is no doubt, will also be tormented, burned in fires of unendurable regret. And he says, for it's as if by chance that I have gained this state so hard to find wherein to help myself. So it's if by chance, it's just the interdependence of infinite meritorious karmas. It's not luck. We don't have luck. Everything is interdependent, but just look at our lives. If we look at our bodies, just to have all these bodies, it's just infinite cells, infinite karmas that are constantly in flux. Everything's constantly in moving. Karma is constantly becoming. We're always becoming, and this how we become is just this. I don't know if random is the word, but it's just this infinite coming together and separating of time and space and matter and so forth. And so just by chance, like it says earlier, like a blind person finding a gem in a mound of dust in a garbage pile. It's just the karma of having something in your possession and the appearance of it and having fingers that can pick it up and all these infinite causes and conditions are hard to find wherein to help myself and accomplish Dharma, even if it's just like Paltra Rinpoche used to beat people over the head saying, like, okay, like, forget about sentient beings, why don't you even just help yourself? You know? If now, while having such discernment. That is to say, right now, with all these advantages and freedoms, I have the ability to discern. I know what to do, what to avoid, what to carry out, what to accomplish, and so forth and so on. I am once again, if now, while having such discernment, I am once again consigned to hell. Oh, that's a comma. And I've been to hell before, been there, done that, kind of. I am as if benumbed by sorcery, as if reduced to total mindlessness. I do not know what dulls my wits or what it is that has me in its grip. Okay, so now we have Dharma, and we think to do virtue, we think to practice, but we don't. Let's say, I'm not, maybe I'm just talking to hear myself talk. It's like Shantideva said in the beginning, I'm just talking to hear myself talk. It'll help me, maybe it'll help you, but we've encountered an incredible opportunity of the Dharma, and it's very rare. The Dharma is rare. Being able to hear it is rare, and being able to understand it is rare. Being able to feel that there's a connection, that it resonates with us, is rare. And we have this opportunity to practice it, to put it into practice, to not just leave it as something that we've heard of, but then just go about our ordinary way. So what makes it, what's missing here? What's the problem? What really is the problem, is what Shantideva says. What is it that's controlling me, that prevents me from acting on all of the above? So then that's the end of that section of using. This section was using how difficult it is to get out of the lower realms where we can't practice, as a way to instill care and carefulness or heedfulness. And then previously was the how difficult it is to gain the opportunities of freedoms and advantages. So how difficult to get what we've got, and how difficult to get out of where we don't want to be. So contemplating these two factors, and then at the outset of this chapter is contemplating the purpose, what it is that we're supposed to be accomplishing from the goal point of view, bodhicitta. Okay, then now I think we'll end here. The next section has to do with the afflictions, our mental afflictions. That's what the reply to that. What is it that has me in its grip? It's our afflictions. So now he'll be discussing, bringing to mind, reflecting on what it is that we need to abandon. That's coming up. Okay. So it would be good to, of course, it would be good to read this. It would be good to read this regularly, this section, and then, stop and ponder and reflect on the intention of these. There's an actual context, and I'm sure that you may. That's not. You may have encountered the teachings that he's been discussing here at other times, like in the four thoughts that turn the mind, and so forth. So these teachings here of Shantideva's, which he's pulled from the sutras, they're all teachings of the sutras, then you should be able to kind of stop and then contemplate with all the other teachings you've had on precious human birth and the six realms of experience and impermanence and so forth. You can call and call all those pieces that you've learned previously and really try to find traction here. So sort of read things and then stop at different points that appeal to you to spend more time on. And then the conclusion always is to be careful. In other words, you can use this verse 12 here in this chapter to create an action item out of your previous contemplation. You know, I will act attentively from this day forth, striving for the benefit of all that lives, but and so forth. So always make a commitment when you after you contemplate. It's always good to contemplate and reflect, and then relax for a minute or a minute, and then make a okay. Therefore, draw a conclusion. Then, therefore, I will act this way. Kind of taking into consideration your own weaknesses and your own worst traits, say. So always, like as he'll be talking up later here, going forward, he'll be talking about the target of our practice. So that's important to know where your practice should be directed. So stay tuned for next time we'll be doing that.